Well, with more on this, we're now joined by Brenda Gunn. She is the Academic and Research Director at the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation. Ms. Gunn, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me on.
So we just spoke, as you know, with the Minister for Indigenous Services. I'm wondering how you would assess the federal government's progress in terms of fostering and bringing about reconciliation in this country.
You know, I think progress is slow, and it's not that it's too slow or not meaning to say that. I just think that the amount of time it took us to get to where we are right now in Canada is centuries in the making. And so there's a lot of relationship to repair, and it takes time. And unfortunately, I think government just it just takes a while to change systems. And so, I see some progress. I definitely see and I hear differences in the relationships, but there's still a lot of work to be done in order to make the deep changes in how the government operates that is needed to really get us towards reconciliation.
Would you say a bit more about that in terms of how you see that getting better?
Sure. I think right now in Canada, we have people who are really aware of the challenges that we have. More than ever, I see Canadians reaching out to gain education about the history and legacy of residential schools. I see the government working to reach out and work with Indigenous peoples more and more. But all of that goodwill and good intentions hasn't yet materialized into concrete changes in the justice system, in the healthcare system, in the education system, in the child welfare system, so that we can start to see a shift in some of these statistics that I think really underpin and can demonstrate the relationship that we have, right? So as long as Indigenous peoples are overrepresented in the justice system based on systemic discrimination, as has been stated by the TRC and many others, there's just a lot of that really deep work to do. But I think some of those first steps of maybe trust building and relationship building has started, but we still need to work at changing those systems.
Yeah, and underline what you were saying earlier about it takes a long time, because I think about coming into work today, and you see so many people already wearing orange, so many children going to school, for example, wearing an orange shirt to school. So the dialogue is happening, but there's also, I think, at least for me, a question as to how well focused people in this country still are on reconciliation. Do you think that focus has softened?
No, I think ever since Kamloops made the announcement of the unmarked graves at the former Kamloops residential school site, Canadians are mobilized now more than ever, at least at the first step of trying to learn the truth of the history and legacy of residential schools. We just had an amazing series of lunch and learns this week, and we had well over 2,000 people tuning in every day. And we were hearing feedback that many of those sort of views were actually offices watching the series together. And we had comments where people were saying, I've been here all week for the learning, right? So people committing 5 hours this week to join us on an education journey towards reconciliation. So, I think the appetite is there, the desire. What is harder is moving past those first few steps of reconciliation on learning and unlearning some of the myths that people may have been raised, and start thinking about how do we take this education into action? How do we start changing Canadian society now that we're all armed with more information?
Okay, so Saturday is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. What concretely then do you think people need to do as a next step in their learning or perhaps even in their actions?
So one of the opportunities that I think National Day for Truth and Reconciliation really presents to all of Canadians is a day every year where we stop and we pause and we remember the children that were taken from their families and sent to these institutions. And importantly, it presents opportunities to continue understanding this history, right? So, no matter where you are on your journey, if it's your first time hearing about residential schools or if it's an area you've been thinking about for decades, there's always more to learn. So, National Day for Truth and Reconciliation really provides that time and space to reflect and learn. And then, for me, really importantly, is to make a commitment to action. So I really hope every Canadian stops and thinks about what can they do for reconciliation in Canada? What changes can they try to affect in their selves, in their families, in their communities, in their cities, in their provinces or territories or their nations? And then next year, come back to that and think about what worked. Where were you able to affect change? Where were the struggles? How can you do things different? And use National Day for Truth and Reconciliation as an annual check-in to make sure that we all stay committed to making the changes needed for reconciliation.
Brenda Gunn, really appreciate the time. Thank you for this.
Thank you so much.